Hi there, and welcome to this lecture about the downfall of the Roman Empire between the year 9 AD to 68 AD. My name is Marcus Henriksson, and I'm a history teacher here in Sweden. So let's begin by looking at the Battle of the Tiberius Pass in Germany. During this time, this area is known as Germania. So why was this such a tragedy for the Roman Empire? Well, the Romans lost 3 Roman legions during this battle and conflict. They were defeated by their Germanic foes, led by a former Roman ally known as Arminius. So this battle stopped the expansion of the Roman Empire, which would later lead to a shortage of both slaves, money, and conquered land. So some historians would argue that the battle at the Tiberius Pass or forest is really important in order to understand why Rome got its decline, so to speak. I would also like to add that during this time the Roman economy was speculative, because many Roman tax collectors had taken great risks in order to earn as much money as possible. But when Rome now needed money, it was not there. People were then forced to sell their assets, and this started to create a downward spiral as prices plummeted in the Roman Empire. During this time, Rome got its most perverted emperor, Tiberius. Why? Well, here is some facts about him. He ran away to an island in Italy called Capri and let other people manage the empire instead. He himself devoted himself to, among other things, sex orgies and throwing people that he didn't like off the edge into the sea. So he's a really interesting person, you might say. He also raped a bunch of people. He preferred boys, and one of his favorites was Caligula. He quickly became known as one of Tiberius' most favorite boys, and he thought that it was his mission to teach Caligula everything he knew. Wink, wink. Nobody really knows for sure how Tiberius died, but many historians believe that Caligula might have grown tired of the old man and strangled him to death in his sleep. Caligula then ruled the Roman Empire between the years 37 AD to 41 AD, so just 4 years, but during this time he did a lot of changes. But let's start with the name Caligula. He was basically a kid that grew up in military camps. And in these camps he had the nickname Caligula, which in Roman means little boot, because he did like to run around with a sword and in huge boots. 8 months after Caligula had risen to power, he felt ill. Many people believed that Caligula would die and started to plot among themselves which one would take power and gain power when Caligula had died. The only problem for them was that Caligula managed to recover, and he chose to punish those who had tried to take the power away from him during the time that he was ill. So he forced those involved to choose between being killed or committing suicide. All people chose to commit suicide. And we know for a fact that Caligula liked violence. He liked to watch violence, he liked to be violent himself, and this has inspired, for example, this man, which is the king in Game of Thrones, Joffrey. Here is also an interesting event. A knight named Antonius Secundus had once said that if Caligula would recover, he would fight like a gladiator. And once Caligula had recovered, well, he ordered him to do so, to his death. Was Caligula really crazy? Well, according to some historians, Caligula was insane. But there are also many historians that disagree with this interpretation. Yes, he made his soldiers pick shells on the beach instead of fighting, but it might have been the fact that he wanted to show the military his power over them. And yes, he said that he was thinking about appointing his own horse the title of consul, which is the highest political office in the Roman Empire. But yet again, he might just wanted to show them his power and therefore choose to do so. But yeah, sometimes Caligula went really far. For example, he forced people in the Senate to run after his chariot several times. He also raped their wives on certain occasions, right in front of the eyes of the senators. And yeah, he was extravagant, you might say. He liked sex orgies, he liked getting attention, he lived basically a life of luxury and abundance, and he had a lot of parties. He also married his mistress, Melonia. And he himself liked to take risks. Caligula participated in both horse races and gladiatorial games. And he wasted a bunch of money on gladiatorial games for the people, horse races, parties, and so on. And on some occasions he also liked to throw gold coins directly at the people just in order to make them like him even more. And he also made a new Roman holiday, Saturnalia. And during that holiday, the slaves and their rulers would switch places for a day. So the slaves really liked Caligula. He also gave them extra powers and rights. This is the first time in Roman history that the slaves now had the opportunity to bring charges against their rulers. And this made, in fact, all slaves in the Roman Empire potential spies for Caligula and his allies. Because if the slaves turned on their master, Caligula would punish them and take away their assets, which in fact gave him more land, more money, and power. But he tried to expand the Roman Empire and he failed to do so. For example, he tried to conquer Britain but didn't. And yeah, the Roman army cost a bunch of money during this time. They experienced severe economical problems. And when they didn't conquer new territories and land, they got more problems. Because if they didn't conquer new land, the Roman emperor couldn't offer the soldiers land instead of coins. And they even tried to lower the gold and silver content of the coins to get more money, but this just created a huge inflation, so the problems remained. Caligula had the people on his side, he had the slaves on his side, but not the Roman senators. And the hatred against Caligula grew. But yeah, he raped their wives. And he said that he always wanted to show his power over the Roman Senate. And he also removed the seat reservations at the city stadiums. Ordinary people would now be allowed to sit next to the senators and rich people in Rome. And he also started trials where he sentenced many in the Roman Senate to death. So basically every time he heard a rumor and stuff like that, a conspiracy against him, he just eliminated those people no matter the cost. And Caligula himself is said to have said, "Let them hate me as long as they fear me." And he continued to provoke. He forced them to send their children to him, and then he subjugated them to various sexual abuses, just in order to show the senators who had the real power. And then he provoked the head of his own bodyguards by calling him a little girl. This was Caligula's final insult, because he was then assassinated by his own bodyguards. After Caligula, we have the Roman Emperor Claudius, and he was one of the better emperors in Rome. He increased the realm, he built new roads, aqueducts, and so forth. So how did he die? Well, Claudius' last consort, Agrippina the Younger, allegedly poisoned him with mushrooms in the year 54 AD. Why? Well, she might wanted to secure the throne for her son Nero. And Nero would then rule the Roman Empire between the year 54 AD to 68 AD. He did some good things. For one, he fixed political stability and prosperity. He also won several wars, for example in Great Britain, and he had a great support from the Roman people. The bad things, well, he introduced new harsh laws regarding the slaves and their rights. For example, if a slave tried to kill his master/wife, Dominus, all the slaves in that household would be executed. He also killed his own mother, Octavia. According to Nero himself, she planned to assassinate him and take over power herself, but we don't know for sure. He also killed his first wife, Agrippina. It might have been due to the fact that she gave him no children, but according to Nero himself, she was cheating. We can't really tell for sure. He also killed his second wife, Poppaea. In a fit of rage while she was still pregnant, he kicked her to the ground and started kicking her, which in fact killed both her and her unborn child. And he started to kill even more people. This might have been to the fact that he might have been paranoid. He basically killed everybody who refused to marry him, and we're talking about a whole bunch of people here. He also killed his own stepson and the head of the bodyguards. And he killed Christians by the thousands in, for example, the Roman Stadium and Colosseum. But Nero, just like Caligula, was really loved by the Roman people, despite all the murders. And then we have the famous Roman fire. And did Nero really burn Rome to the ground? Probably not. I mean, some historians believe that he might have, but some historians don't. Why not? Well, he tried to improve Rome's defense against fires. He also participated and paid for the repairs of the city. But yeah, he had many enemies, especially in the Roman Senate. So just like Caligula, he was loved by the people, But he had a bunch of enemies in the Senate and among the military, especially after the Great Fire in Rome. Many of his enemies believed that Nero bore the greatest responsibility for what had happened. So he himself chose to commit suicide the year 68 AD. We do in fact have a newer theory on why Nero became paranoid. It might have been because of lead, which was common in Rome's tubes and pipes. Symptoms for children who get too much lead in them are lower IQ, increased aggression, increased chance of different diagnoses, increased impulsivity, lack of empathy, and among adults we can see personality changes, increased irritation, paranoia, and depression. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment sections below. The sources I have used for this lecture and video are World History: A New Perspective by Clyde Ponting, A History of World Societies by John P. McKay, The World's History, History by Elisabeth Ivansson, Romer Sandberg and Mattias Tordaj, All-Time History Maxi by Halm Salgren, Börje Bergström and Arne Lövgren, The First Roman Emperor Line by Tom Holland, Wikipedia Caligula, Wikipedia Nero, and other internet sources, documentary Rome, Engineering and Empire, 5 of the Worst Military Blunders in History, documentary History Secrets, Seasons 4, The Headless Gladiators in York, Tony Robinson's romance Caligula, Ancient Roman Documentary Timeline, Tony Robinson's romance Nero, Ancient Roman Documentary Timeline, Rebellion, The Rise and Fall of an Empire, The Animated History of Italy, Part 1, Claudius, Rome's Accidental Empire, Caligula, Rome's Mad Emperor, Tiberius, the Reluctant Emperor, what went on in a typical Roman household, the Teutoburger Forest, 9 AD. The conspiracy behind the Teutoburger Forest massacre. Was Caligula really most evil emperor? Teutoburger Forest, the origins of Europe's Great Rift. The economy of ancient Rome. Arminius, hero of Germania. Inflation and the fall of Rome. Empire of psychopaths, what led to the Romans to be quite so brutal, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. So I hope that you during this lecture have learned something new. Have a great day now. Bye.